Welcome to the P.T.S.D podcast with your host, comedian and military veteran, Bernard the Laugh Therapist Himes, where we discuss P.T.S.D, processing traumatic situations differently, and give you tools to help you overcome the stigma of seeking help. If you're ready to be inspired, then welcome to the stigma-free zone. Here's your host, the Laugh Therapist himself, Bernard Himes.
What up, good people? What up? This is your boy, Bernard Himes, a.k.a. the Laugh Therapist. And listen, welcome to the P.T.S.D podcast, Processing Traumatic Situations Differently. Here, we try to inform, enlighten, and become advocates for one another as we learn productive ways to process our trauma. Always remember, as a therapist, I am not licensed. I am only medicated. Listen, y'all, welcome. I want to thank y'all for being here today, y'all. We have an awesome show. I have Miss Neisha Himes here. Every time I hear Himes, I think of Hines. So we some kin down the way, but the tree just split, and they went to the M, and we kept the N. Come on, y'all. Right now, I'm going to bring on my guest right now, Miss Neisha Himes. How you doing, Neisha?
I'm doing well. How are you?
All right, y'all. Miss Neisha, she is a domestic violence specialist. Listen, y'all, we going to have some great dialogue here. Miss Neisha, I would like for you to tell the people just a little bit about yourself. Not your story yet, just a little bit about you.
Okay. So, again, thank you so much for having me. My name
You're more
is
than
Neisha.
welcome.
I'm Neisha Himes. I'm originally from New Jersey and have been here in Hampton Roads area for a number of years now, 15 plus at this point, often going home whenever I can.
Okay.
Grew up and very close with my parents, my siblings, and I'm a mom. Have two children. Their ages are 16 and 22. And, I just love doing the work that I do, which I know we'll get into my story a little bit later, but I am a domestic violence specialist, having experienced some things in my past. And it's just very, I would say, when you're called to do something and when you find out in life, about turning pain into purpose.
Come on now.
And, I don't want to get started too early,
Go ahead. We can jump right into it. We can get right into it.
So just very passionate about what I do. Fun facts, love chocolate chip cookies.
Okay.
I love boxing, which we'll get into, and just battle anybody on the dance floor, whether I win or not. I mean, we'll see. Okay. But that's just a little bit about
Good. All right. Well, let's jump right on into this interview. Listen, what is domestic violence?
So that's a great question. Domestic violence is a pattern of behavior that is used to control, intimidate, isolate, or cause harm, inflict harm against another person, particularly in your household when it is against a partner, whether that's a current partner, spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, if it's an ex-partner, someone you were intimate with, if you had one of those relationships, a situationship or whatever, and then now that person is exhibiting this behavior, this pattern of control, manipulation, isolation, violence, whether that's violence by words or physical, then that's where it becomes intimate partner violence.
Wow. Okay. Wow. How big is the problem?
It's huge. It impacts everyone. When I think about the work that I do and not knowing back then what I know now, I realize the problem is much bigger than me. It's much bigger than you. We all know someone who has been impacted by domestic violence. Some of us have been impacted by domestic violence and don't even realize that we have.
Wow.
It's 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men who have experienced it. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men who have experienced it as far as severe intimate partner violence. It affects old, young, Black, white, Hispanic, whether you're in the LGBT community, whether it doesn't matter where you live, your zip code, if you got degrees, if you have your GED, it does not matter. It affects us all.
Wow. That's good. Listen, y'all, we gonna ask some good questions here. Yes, but do you mind sharing a little bit about your story?
I don't mind.
Okay.
So I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I was in a very violent and toxic relationship for about 5 years. This was someone that I was introduced to by a former coworker. He happens to be a relative of hers at the time when we worked together. I had been out of a relationship with my youngest child's father for about 5 months, 6 months or so.
Okay.
So I would go to work and she would say, I want to introduce you to him. I think y'all would hit it off. Y'all have the same sense of humor. You both love to dance. All of these different characteristics that sounded appealing. And then at the time I was just like, I wasn't sure about it, having gotten out of a long-term relationship some months prior, but then it became a point where it was just like, well, why not?
Right. All right.
Cast the net back out and see what other fish are in the sea. So she had a birthday party and that's where we met. And I remember I was sick that night. I probably shouldn't have gone, but I was just like, nah, I told her I would go for her. So we met and we hit it off. We was dancing, he smelled good, had an edge up and all of that, and sense of humor. And the conversation it just seemed that we hit it off. So at the end of the night, he asked me for my phone number. And at the time I declined, citing the fact that I had been out of a relationship not long prior and just wasn't sure if I was ready. Then at the end of the night, I thought about it and I was like, well, why not? So I hit up his sister and said, look, your brother asked me for my phone number. I declined at the time, but can you pass it along? So she did. And he messaged me the next day or so. So that was back before WYD, like what you doing? It was before the Netflix and chill. It was Redbox. It was Redbox at the time. But it started that conversation. And so every day or so, just checking in on one another, proceeded to go on a couple dates here and there. And I was feeling them. And, it was just that newness when it's like, oh, this seems to be like, what's this? This is different than what I've experienced before. So just to fast forward a red flag that I know now was a red flag, but at the time I didn't look at it like one, is I found out he went through my phone. And he saw some text messages between myself and my youngest child's father, which wasn't even those type of text messages, was very like co-parenting.
Correct.
And just some other things going on in there. And in hindsight, even as I have this conversation now, I think about how he didn't have a great relationship with his child's mother. And that came out later in my relationship with him, but he didn't understand the dynamics of the relationship that I had with my that co-parenting. So it would be like, So he just was like, y'all talking or what's going on? I thought you liked me and I'm feeling you. And I thought we had something going on. And I was just like, we do. And I never really thought about the fact that he went through my phone. Like he said that he saw the messages pop up, like my phone was on the table or something and he saw it. But that should have been a red flag right there. The fact that we were just talking, like casually going on dates, hadn't solidified anything yet. And you're looking at my phone. So since then he didn't trust me. So it was always like a question. Like, I think that I would say that planted a seed of insecurity, but he already had that in him. If something like that could make him not trust me, you know what I'm saying? So then I found myself always looking to make him feel like he didn't have anything to worry about.
Got it.
So if the phone rang 5 times before I answered, when he called me, it's like, who are you talking to? Who was at your house? Why you didn't answer? What's taking so long? And it's the subtle things. And that's the thing about domestic violence, which we'll get into. People think that you just go on a date, in your first date, and somebody hits you and it's like, dang, this person is abusive. I'm going to leave him alone. But really, it's a gradual process.
Wow.
These little nuggets, these crumbs that are dropped, where it's the control and the isolation and the manipulation and the gaslighting, and you don't even realize it's happening. We're not taught about love bombing in school. We're not taught about these things, the early signs to look for. So it's such a long story, but just to condense it. So that started happening more. So I found myself making sure that I answered the phone But then by the second time, mind you, this wasn't me. Like,
right.
Growing up, especially when I lived in Jersey, and I was like, I was that person. Like, I wish somebody would put their hands on me. I'm out. I would do this. I would do that. I've had friends who have been in DV relationships where I've said things like, girl, why don't you just leave? So listening to that, and you just really have no idea. Nobody says, oh, I want to be a victim of domestic violence.
Correct.
I would love to be in an abusive relationship. That's not how it happens. And by the time you realize you're in it, you've been in it. So,
and you know what? We can always say, you know, as you said, it wouldn't be me. It couldn't be. You never know until you in that situation.
You never know.
Correct.
So even with him doing things like, so I do spoken word, and I was very heavy, like in an open mic scene back then. So it'd just be little things like, well, why do you have to go to the open mic tonight? I didn't get to see you all week. So here I am. I'm a mom of 2. I don't have men around my children. So the only time that he and I would hang out is either when they were at the dad's house, or if like 9 o'clock after they're in bed, then you want to come over and bring a red box over or whatever, you want to chill, then that's what we'll do. But so my time was limited. I was working. Then there was a point where I was working 2 jobs, again, have my children. So the time was limited, where it was like every other weekend we could hang out, or in the evening we could hang out, but you're not going to be around during the day. So I could be doing anything like fixing my kids dinner, or helping them with their homework, or getting them ready for bed. And if it's like, oh, did you have your daughter's father over, or was you talking to one of your poet friends? So then stuff like that started happening more and more. So I don't get to see you as much. Can we just hang out tonight? So then I found myself just gradually, I'm not going out as much. I'm not talking to my friends as much, because it's things like, I just like you so much. I just want to spend time together. Now, mind you, I got out of a relationship several months prior and never took that time to heal for myself. So that's a big thing. I didn't take the time to rebuild that confidence. So here I am, this vulnerable woman, and not really understanding how important it was that I should have taken that time for me. So I just jumped from one relationship into another without taking the time to get to know myself, to get to love myself, to get to heal from what, transpired in a relationship prior.
Wow.
So anyway, to fast forward, it got to a point where the disrespect verbally started happening. So if I ask a question and he might say something like, duh, it doesn't take a genius. Like, it's not rocket science. So in my head, I'm like, who are you talking to? You know? And he's like, I was just joking. You're too sensitive. You're overreacting. You picking fights when there's not a fight. So that's where that gaslighting comes in. The whole point of gaslighting is to make the person who's being gaslighted question their perception of reality or judgment. So that's a very effective form of psychological and emotional abuse. So if I can make you feel like you're being too sensitive, that you're overreacting, that you're being dramatic or doing too much, then it makes it easier to inflict abuse, because you start questioning if what you think is happening is really happening. So somebody saying to me, or him saying to me, you're so dumb. That's a dumb thing that you just did. And I'm like, oh, now you're calling me dumb. He's like, oh, well, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I know you're so smart, and why would you do something like that? I know you're intelligent, but you just did an unintelligent thing just now. So somebody disrespects you, and then you look back and then they clean it up like, no, that's not how it really was. So you just start questioning everything. And Gaslight, fun fact, is based on a play, I think from 1938, where this man, he marries this rich woman, this heiress to a fortune, and he tries to convince her that she's quote unquote crazy by doing things like he would dim the lights in the house, like those little gas lights, the dimmers. So when she would come in and she would say, did you turn the lights down? And he said, no, I didn't touch anything. I didn't do anything. She's like, I thought it was brighter in here when I left. And he's like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Then he would hide like picture frames or hide her favorite book. And then he would miraculously find it when she's like, I know I had it here on this table. And he would find it on the fireplace mantle and say, no, it was here this whole time. Oh my goodness, you would lose your head if it wasn't attached. So that was to plant seeds of doubt. And you're
Doubt.
just like, I know I had this book here. And that's the point. That's what they do with gaslighting in abusive situation. I've had women who approach me and say, do you see these scars on me? Do you see these bruises on me? And it's like, yes, I do. And then they break down crying because not only has their partner convinced them that the bruises aren't there, they convinced them that an assault never took place to even cause the bruises. I've had women and men in situations, in this particular situation, a woman was pushed down the stairs by her partner.
Okay.
And at the end of that conversation, he convinced her that she tripped over a pair of shoes that was at the top of the steps and that he tried to catch her. So by the end of that conversation, she's apologizing to him for accusing him. Wow. But he really pushed her down the stairs. But in your mind, you're just like, well, maybe this didn't happen the way I remember it happening.
Correct.
So things like that started happening in my relationship. Then eventually it became outright verbally abusive, but I had a misconceived notion of what domestic violence looked like. I thought it was just bruises and black eyes and things like that. So even when he's coming out his face verbally, and I'm just like, okay, he's just being a jerk, or he had a bad day because he was apologizing. I say, oh, I'm just stressed out, or I wouldn't talk to you like that if you didn't make me so mad. So
see that,
once that's there.
The one, if you didn't make me.
Wow. If you didn't make me.
Right.
So if you didn't make me.
Wow.
So what I tell people is once they get you mentally, the rest is easy.
Oh.
So if somebody's breaking you down mentally, so here I am, this woman getting out of a relationship not long prior, in this new relationship, and just needing to feel validated by this person.
Okay.
So then he would show me that love and that affection. And, I love chocolate chip cookies. He's baking chocolate chip cookies for me. If we get into an argument or he says something out of his mouth crazy, then he's giving me cookies. Or then he's saying, I love you. I really care about you. I just had a bad day. Or, people don't understand me. You're the only one who understands me, and things like that. So I'm thinking this person needs me, and I'm thinking I need them.
Wow.
And then by the time it became physical, it had been verbally and emotionally, psychologically abusive for years. But again, I didn't recognize it as so. So here I'm at work, and at this point I'm working for a mortgage company, and I'm going to work. I'm depressed. I'm dealing with anxiety. I don't recognize any of this as being relative to my relationship that I'm in. Then I'm also we go through life struggles and things like that. So I'm going through financial struggles, and I wind up losing my home. So I sent my children. I'm getting really transparent with you here.
Yeah,
oh my goodness. Lord.
Hey,
it's okay. I guess that's why you got therapists in your name. Okay.
Yeah.
I've told this story before countless times, but I lost my home, and I sent my children to live with my youngest child's father, who was like a father figure to my son as well, my older son. So he's in the area. So my day consisted of getting up, going to his house to see my children off for school, going to work, having whole anxiety attacks in the bathroom around 5 o'clock because people would say things like, oh, I can't wait to go home and watch Judge Judy, or I can't wait to see what's in my crock pot. And for me, it was like, home, I got to figure out where I'm sleeping. And I'm very, very close with my family. My family, most of them are up north. And then my dad is here, and still nobody knew what was going on because I was embarrassed. And again, I didn't believe that I was in an abusive relationship. I thought my boyfriend was mean. Sometimes I thought that he didn't know how to treat me sometimes, but I didn't equate that to domestic violence because I had the thought that a domestic violence victim looks like a woman cowering in a corner while somebody's just hitting her without mercy. And the thing about abusive relationships, it's not always bad all the time. You have that cycle, which we'll talk about. But
did he try to isolate you?
Yeah,
Like,
so that's where the me not going to open mics as much, me not hanging out with my friends. My
okay,
family's already for the most part in another state. So
okay,
it's very easy to say, well, can we just hang out? Can we just go here? I
mm-hmm,
wanted to see you. And so one day you wake up and you realize you're on an island and don't know how you got there because now you're not talking to your friends and your family as much. Now you're not doing the hobbies and the things that you
correct,
enjoyed doing as
correct,
much. Now you're the only person you're seeing is this person outside of my children. The only person I really saw other than my coworkers was him.
okay,
But I didn't realize that that's that gradual process of control and
right,
manipulation and isolation. So it became worse when I lost my home because for a while I was staying with a girlfriend. I was hopping from friend's house to friend's house. I'm paying rent there. I'm
mm-hmm,
paying what I can. And there were times when I stayed at a hotel, motel. There were times when I stayed in my car. So it's like my day consisted of seeing my kids off for school, going to work, and then figuring out what I was going to do after work. So my
wow,
trunk of my car was filled with like shoes and clothes and hangers and deodorant and ramen noodles and
wow.
and like cookies, of course,
So
cookies and just things, and nobody knew.
right, so you are to me a person that when they say I don't look like what I've been through, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You do not look like the story that you were telling. I know you, I've
Right.
seen you, but as we say about social media, when you see a person on social media and they doing their thing, you don't know the backstory.
You don't know. And I
You
try to be transparent, but even I don't. Yeah,
correct,
I mean, you just don't know. And I have people tell me that all the time. Like, I would have never thought you would go through something like that. So
correct.
just for the sake of time to fast forward, he didn't know that I was hotel hopping or couch hopping or any
Okay.
of that because he would have accused me of
Mm.
being with other people. So he thought that I was just staying at a girlfriend's house and paying her
Okay.
rent. Right. So, and then I would go stay with him sometimes. So one day he said, well, why don't you just stop paying your friend rent and just come stay with me and get yourself together?
Mm.
So for me, it was just, I want to get my kids back under my roof.
Okay.
So I can't keep spending money. There were times when I would go to, I always say Red Roof Inn was my best friend. I would go to Red Roof
Okay.
Inn, check in at like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, pay anywhere from $80 to $140 or whatever, depending on if
Mm.
it's a Tuesday or a Friday. But either way, I'm paying this money just to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and leave. So I was literally paying just to sleep somewhere and
Wow.
doing this every like several times a week. So I said I could stack this money and then get a place and get my
Hmm.
kids back under my roof. That's what, even though I saw them every day, it was different. It was
Correct.
hard hearing my daughter say, "Where are you going?" or "Why
Correct.
can't you
Ooh.
stay?" And even though, I knew were in a great environment, had three
Hmm.
square meals a day, that was that was one of the hardest things I've ever done because that was for 9 months.
But that might have been hard, but you knew I need to put
I
them
knew,
in a
right,
I need to
right.
put them in a
They
healthy
need to be
situation.
good. As long as they
Correct.
were good, it didn't matter. As long as they were good, I saw them every day. I knew that they were okay. I knew that they were well taken care of. So whatever with me, fine, but I needed to do what I needed to do for them.
Okay.
So at this point, I know that this relationship is not the best, but I said, "Oh, I gotta get a place and I have to save my money. And then maybe us being around each other more, maybe things will get better. As far
Okay.
it'll almost kind of be like playing house kind of thing." So I was just like, "Oh, it'll just be better.
Mm.
Not that it will enhance or that the situation will get, even worse." I just
Right.
thought, well, maybe it'll be better. So
Mm.
moved in, and the first time he put his hands on me, I remember I came home from work late. I remember everything that I had on. I had on these
Wow.
really fly leopard heels that I still wish I had. I had on this cute little shirt with
Okay.
frills, gray slacks, and he accused me of being somewhere that I wasn't. And I'm like, I just got off work, and he was calling me names. And at this point, I have been dealing with the name calling and the disrespect and being belittled and berated and all of that for years.
Okay.
So I was sitting on the edge of the bed, the foot of the bed, and he was sitting at the head of the bed. And I'm looking back thinking now, like, you got some nerve to be thinking you better than somebody. You didn't even have a headboard. He was just sitting, his back was just, this is just, but that speaks to me too. I'm like,
right,
you
but
just sitting with but
your mind
like,
is in a different place.
Right. So he's sitting with his back against the wall. And that's no shade to anybody who don't have a headboard. I'm just saying he thought he was so much better than people. Right. But he was sitting with his back against the wall and he's calling me these names. And I said, you know what, forget this. And I reached down to grab my purse, which was on the floor. And when I turned around, so I'm grabbing the purse with my left hand, I turned around to my right. He's there with a pillow. And he slaps me so hard with this pillow that I fall off the bed in between the space of the bed and the wall.
Wow.
So a pillow is not like, I mean, we've all been in pillow fights, I imagine. And sometimes you could get hit hard. It was more so my pride that was hurt than the actual force of the pillow.
Correct.
But what happened next was I jumped up and it's that jersey, it's that whoever, I just jump up and score up. I remember picking up the remote and he charged at me and I threw the remote and he charged at me and fought me like I was a man off the street.
Wow.
And kicked, hit, just he fought me like I was this stranger. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I just want to know, well, how did you get the strength to leave the situation?
So to fast forward there, that first situation when I wound up being strangled, and if you've ever been strangled by your partner, you're 10 times more likely to be killed by that partner. And
wow.
And that was the first time. So usually it escalates to something like that. So the first time he physically assaulted me, he strangled me. And I was like, wow, I'm going to die right here and nobody knows where I am. So to fast forward, there were many incidents like that in between. In the last physical assault, he was accusing me again. He was telling me I was out cheating on him. And that last time I didn't fight back. Because at this point, I just wanted to die. I was suicidal. I was praying to God every day. Just take me out. I can't do this anymore. I wrote letters to my parents, my siblings, as far as what to do with my children. I wrote letters to my children. And then every day God would wake me up and I would be mad at God. And it would seem like the most aggressive wake up. I would say aggressive because the birds were chirping. The sun is shining. My kids are running to me like when I would go see them, hey, mommy, I can't wait to see you. Or what are we doing today? Can we have pancakes? And I'm just like, God, I said I didn't want to wake up today. And here you are waking me up again. Like, what's going on? So with the last incident, that's where I was. So when I didn't fight back, I just said, well, just kill me now. And after that was over, I remember jumping up and down and screaming, like, look at me. I was at work. I had on my work uniform. And he kissed me on my forehead and he said I seemed upset and he offered me one of his daughter's juice boxes. And I went to my son's soccer game right after that, found out that I was in a lot of pain, went to the hospital later that night for the first time and found out I had broken 2 fractured ribs on my right side, type 2 concussion. It was a lot. And I still went back because I still had nowhere to go.
And that's PTSD.
Right. And then you have that trauma bonding, which nobody talks about. So what gave me the strength to leave is months after that, because when I tell people, well, March of 2012 was the last time he physically assaulted me. And they're like, well, that's the last time he was abused. And no, because then I was still dealing with verbal, emotional, psychological. He started going to counseling, but the only thing he stopped was the physical. So to fast forward later that year, we're in an argument. Once again, it's more name calling. I'm being berated, demeaned. It's so horrific that it's just like, who even thinks of these things?
Wow.
During the course of that argument, he called my mom and my sisters, which I've explained, I'm very close with my family. He called my mother and my sisters the N-word. And why that's key is because this was an interracial relationship.
Okay.
So when you add, abuse is horrific. It doesn't matter what you look like, who it is, but you add another level of being degraded when you add that racial component, when you have someone, a white male, only dated Black women, children's mothers Black, all Black friends, like that kind of thing. And then you have him not just calling you a dumb B, but a dumb black B.
Okay.
A worthless black B. So when you add that level of shame, that was another reason I didn't tell my family. But when he did that is what gave me the courage to leave, because it was one thing for me to not stand up for myself, but another for me to not stand up for the women I love most, and they weren't there to defend themselves.
Wow. Listen, y'all, we are talking to Miss Neisha Himes. She's a domestic violence specialist, but more importantly, she is a domestic violence survivor.
Yes.
And I love it. I love it. Listen, how can someone help a loved one who may be experiencing domestic violence?
So the first thing is not to judge, not to say things like, why don't you just leave? Because it's all about you can present that question in this way. What are the barriers preventing you from getting to safety, and how can I help you overcome those barriers? The difference between those two statements is one is very accusatory. Girl, why don't you just leave? Man, why don't you just leave? And one is very empowering and gives the survivor a voice to say, what can I do to help you?
Okay.
You can do things like learn about your domestic violence resources in the community, even if the only thing you can do is offer a hotline number. There's help. So even if you look up domestic violence agency and put in your zip code, you're going to get a list of resources, or the National Domestic Violence Hotline. You can do something like help them with safety planning. Safety planning can be anything from having a code word if the violence is escalating.
That's good.
And that person texts you and say pineapples, and you know that pineapples means call 911 and send them to my house. If you're keeping an emergency overnight bag for them, and maybe they have children or pets, maybe they're sending you money. You're putting $5 here, $10 there. You're having a disposable phone readily available for them, because sometimes when survivors leave, they leave with nothing but the clothes on their back.
Wow.
So being non-judgmental, offering a safe space, understanding that if they decide to go back, because on average, a survivor will go back, it'll take 7 times on average before they leave for good. So that doesn't mean they're abused 7 times, and then on that 7th time, they say, oh, well, okay, that was number 7, I'm out. They may be abused for years before they make the first attempt, months after that before the second attempt, years before the third attempt. So when you break it down that way, it's a vicious cycle. Yes.
Vicious cycle. Wow. Listen, y'all, she is breaking down some great nuggets right here. This is great nuggets. Listen, I want to talk about some myths about domestic violence, okay?
Yes.
All right.
That's important.
Domestic violence is only physical.
No. There's so many different physical. Again, it leads up to that.
Okay.
Rarely does it just start off as physical.
Okay.
So you have that control, you have that manipulation, that isolation, you have the love bombing. Love bombing is very important. That's a very, very early factor. So us, especially as women, we eat all up that attention.
Okay.
So when somebody is like, you're 2 weeks into talking and they're saying, you know what? I think we're soulmates. I think we just belong together. I can't see myself with anybody but you. And then they're popping up at your job. They're popping up at your house. Oh, I know that you normally don't have people around your kids, but I just wanted to pop over and give you guys some dinner. So there's a difference between courting and love bombing. So I've had women and men hit me up like, so if I receive flowers or give somebody flowers, that's love bombing? No, that's not what I'm saying. But if something seems too good to be true, if things are moving too quickly into the relationship where I've had women, this young lady, she met this guy on Instagram. A week later, she moved him in. By the second, third week, he was physically assaulting her. By the 4th week, there was a police report. So, I mean, and this is work I've seen not only in my nonprofit organization, shout out to Grove Foundation, not only am I worked in the prosecutor's office, I've worked in a police department in the special victims unit. So I see it from the community side and from the system side, like the legal side. And you have so many different types. There's that emotional abuse.
Okay.
That verbal abuse. So the verbal abuse, when someone is disrespecting you verbally, belittling you, making you feel small or stupid, and then how you're made to feel as a result of that is where that emotional abuse comes in. Financial abuse is prevalent in 99% of domestic violence cases. So if you have no money, you have no access to resources. So if someone is not allowing you to work,
right,
or let's say you do work, but they make you give them your paycheck.
Okay.
Or if they're giving you an allowance and then you got to go home and show them the receipt. Oh, I gave you $50 to go to Walmart and buy XYZ. Show me the receipt. Not only that, so I know that you spent the money on what you said you was going to spend it on, but so I know that you was really at Walmart. I remember my ex did that. I missed his call and I told him I was at Walmart and I guess I didn't have reception. So he wanted me to meet him and show him my receipt.
Oh my God.
And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. But even as I said no, I was like, okay, I know what I'm going to have to deal with because I said no.
I've heard that
because
before.
I said no. Yeah. But I refused. I just was like, so I'm in saying that now, I realized that there was still some fight in me, some pride in me then where it's like, no, I'm not getting up out of my bed to show you this Walmart receipt. But there was a point where I thought about it. I was like, okay, let me just meet him so I don't have to deal with what I'll have to deal with after for not showing him this receipt. But then there's immigration abuse. If you have someone who's not from this country and they come here and their partner won't allow them to learn English, they tell them, you know what, if you report me, I'm going to have you deported. You'll never see your kids again. So there's that form. They won't let you go to school. They won't let you become a citizen. So there's where they use that. Abuse is about control and manipulation and maintaining power and control. There's religious abuse. Can't tell you how many Christians, especially I've talked to, and they're like, well, God said, through thick and thin, through death, till death do us part. And I'm like, yeah, but they didn't mean death this way. Like this person will be at your funeral. There's coercion. There's, sexual abuse can happen within relationships as well. Sometimes you have people, they're like, well, I feel like I have to give this to my partner, or it's not rape if we're married. Yes, it can be. So there's various types.
Because they say victims usually provoke violence. That's a myth.
That's a myth. And sometimes, and you think that if you respond to violence, then that you're an abuser too. So I've talked to survivors, both. Doesn't matter what they look like. Again, I've talked to survivors who are professors, who are doctors, who are high school students, who are stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home dads, whatever. And they feel like if you fight back, that's what I told myself. Well, I fight back. Everybody fights in relationships. Like, this is an abuse. I fight back. I'm not in the corner like, oh my gosh, just hit me. No, I fight back. So this isn't domestic violence, but it absolutely was.
Wow.
And there's a myth that men don't go through it. Some of the worst cases I've seen have been men. Because
you're not taught. Well, we're taught you don't put your hands on a woman, but they can put someone put their hands on you.
Right. I've seen again LGBT community. Another myth is that you can tell what a survivor looks like. I've talked to people and they're like, "Oh, you're too pretty to have gone through that," or "You're so." I remember a former coworker was like, "Oh my gosh, you went through that? I always thought you was so strong." I was just like, "Wow."
Yeah.
The stuff that people say.
And like, did you think about what you was about to say before you said that?
Right, and you thought about it and then said, "You know what? It's okay. I'm still gonna say it."
Lord, listen, y'all. We talking to Miss Neisha Himes. She's a domestic violence specialist, but more importantly, she's a domestic violence survivor. Give us a little bit about your nonprofit.
Okay, so GROW Foundation, it stands for Girls Recognizing Our Worth.
Okay.
We is registered right here in Hampton Roads or in Virginia, and we serve the Hampton Roads area. It used to be registered in my home state of New Jersey as well, but it was difficult to maintain a nonprofit in 2 different states when you only live in one. But we provide support to those who have been impacted by domestic violence. So one of our programs is our crisis intervention program, where we will provide emergency lodging at an undisclosed location for a survivor who is looking for a shelter. Let's say they ran out with nothing, have no money, but all of the shelters are full, or they're not able to get with maybe a support system, lives out of state or in another city. So we'll have them in a hotel until we can either connect them with longer term shelter, or we can help them get to that support system. We also have the Survivor Sustainability Program, which is part of that crisis intervention, where we'll help a survivor if they're looking for food, clothing, toiletries. Sometimes it's an Uber ride to get to the magistrate's office. Sometimes it's an Uber ride to get to the police department to file a report, or to go to a job interview, or get medical attention, something along those lines. And just that emergency help in that crisis, but also that emotional support, because one of the reasons I started Grow was when I was in that situation. And I remember calling a shelter. The one time I found the courage to call a shelter, and they asked me if I was being beaten that night. And I was like, no, but I'm afraid to go home. And they said, well, I'm sorry, you're not in imminent danger.
Wow.
So what I heard at that moment was my fear wasn't enough, that I wasn't scared enough. And that's what a lot of survivors deal with now, where there's different levels of what is considered imminent danger. And it's hard because you might go to a shelter and they might determine that you're not in imminent danger. And how it works in Hampton Roads, you have to prioritize to a degree your locality. So a survivor in Virginia Beach may go to that shelter in Virginia Beach, but if they're full, they may contact the agency in another city in Hampton Roads. But if they don't have room, or they have to, I hate to say prioritize, but that's pretty much what it is, then you might look at an agency in Newport News or whatever, or serving the peninsula, and they're not able to assist at that time either. So then you're told to call the homeless regional hotline. And then if you've had DV within, let's say, some might say 6 months or a year, then you're too much of a risk. So you might not be in imminent danger, consider imminent danger to get into a DV shelter, but you might be considered too much danger to go to a homeless shelter. So what do you do? So we're filling in like that gray area. We do a lot of community outreach events. One of my favorites is going on right now, where we book an ice cream truck, a snow cone truck, and we visit all of the DV shelters in Hampton Roads between the months of June and August. And we treat the kids, the parents, and staff to ice cream, because it's like a sense of normalcy, you know, just to have the ice cream bell. The ice cream man is ringing his bell, and to see all these kids come running out and getting ice cream. It's just a beautiful thing. So
because I'm sure the kids feel different too. A
lot of people forget about the kids. And I have a friend, she has a nonprofit. She lost her mother to DV. And she's like, her tagline is, sometimes the children are the survivors. We don't think about how the children are impacted by domestic violence, growing up witnessing that and seeing that and being taught that this is what love looks like. So and we have a survivor support group that meets monthly at the boxing gym that I attend, and that's facilitated by myself and a licensed therapist. So for the first hour, we have the therapy. So we sit in the ring, and I'm so corny. I'm like, everybody get in the empower ring, you know? So we get in the ring, and we have that hour where we can unload emotionally and talk things out and really dissect what the traumas that we've endured. And then the second hour, they get boxing training by my boxing coaches. Shout out to Match Bout. And they learn. I mean, we're flipping tires, we're hitting heavy bags, we're running laps, we're jumping rope. So you get that empowerment. You see people who have never stood up for themselves, standing inside of a ring with gloves on, holding their hands up and their head up, and saying, "No, I can do this." So and
I just got something in my mind when you say y'all in the boxing ring, and people think you in the boxing ring to fight back. I think you're in the boxing ring to give strength so I can leave a situation.
Yeah, like one of the young ladies I'll never forget. It was the first time she had worked out in 3 years. Her partner wouldn't let her go to the gym because it was like, who you trying to get fit for? Who you trying to look good for? The thing about DV, I mean, again, it's that intimate partner violence, that control. I've talked to women who were not allowed to go to the doctor. Like, well, I don't need somebody else looking at your privates. You're not going to the GYN. You're not going to do that. You're not getting this medical attention. No, you're not going to do that. Yeah. And so that's how serious that control is. So Grow will be 7 years old in August, and I'm very proud of it.
Wow. Listen, y'all, we talking to Miss Neisha Himes. She's a domestic violence specialist, but more importantly, she's a domestic violence survivor. So just give me a little synopsis of how did your faith play a part in this?
That's a big one. So first of all, I told you I do spoken word. I've always been a writer, been writing since I was little. And it wasn't until when I was out of that relationship where I have this box of journals from when I was like, poetry from when I was like 8, 9 years old. And I look at some of the stuff I was talking about. I was like, what? I thought I was a little Maya Angelou. Like, I was just like, roses are red. That's just the way I was writing this stuff out. But
Okay.
I found a journal when I was about 16, 17, and I was outlining my life's goals. So here I am, this teenager in New Jersey. And I said, when I grow up, I want to do this. This is what I want my family to look like. I said, but I want to move to Norfolk, Virginia and work with abused women and kids.
Wow.
16, 17. So at the time, my parents, they divorced. By this time, my dad moved to Hampton Roads first. I don't know where I got it because my dad wasn't even living in Norfolk, Virginia. But so when I saw this as a survivor, this was before I even started Grow or anything. And I'm looking at my 16, 17-year-old self writing, I want to work with abused women and kids in Virginia. And my first official job, as far as my 9-to-5 job in this field, was I was working for the Norfolk Commonwealth Attorney's Office as a domestic violence victim advocate.
Wow.
So I had started Grow and then got the job. And that's another reason I started Grow. I tried to, the more I started speaking out, I started doing spoken word and speaking out about DV, and people started reaching out to me for help, survivors looking for advice. Then I wanted to do more. I tried to get a job in prosecutor's office, shelters, and I kept getting told that I didn't have the right experience because I didn't have a degree. And I was like, but I lived it.
Lived experience. Please.
I lived it. And I'm in school now, but even still, there's no piece of paper on this earth. I've said it 1,000 times.
Thank you.
If you have never gone through domestic violence or whatever that trauma is that you're looking to bring awareness to, there's no piece of paper on this earth that will outweigh that lived experience if that person with the degree has never gone through it. I don't care what it is. So just to wait, what was your question? I feel like I'm just talking.
Hey, I'm just listening.
What was your question?
Your faith. How did your
faith? Yes, bring it back. Bring it back.
It's all good.
When I was in that relationship, and when I tell people God and my kids,
okay,
that was the only thing, because I literally would pray daily, God, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't. But then I would still fight. I would still get up and push through. And then there became a point when I said, there is light at the end of this tunnel, because the last time he physically assaulted me, and I remember just curling up in a fetal position and just trying to figure out what part of my body to cover from the blows. You only have 2 hands.
Wow.
I can't cover my ribs. I couldn't cover my face. It was like, okay, what do I do? What with? So I just remember curling up in this ball and praying to God, please help me. Just please help me, and he did. And I look at that, the only way I was able to get through something like that, not just the physical, when he strangled me, our very first physical assault. I'm fading in and out of consciousness. You can literally die within seconds of being strangled.
Okay.
You know what I mean? You can die. It doesn't even have to be in that moment. The after effects, the neurological after effects that you can deal with days, weeks, months, even years later, and each physical assault got worse. But not only that, mentally, I was just broken, just to the point where I hated who I saw in the mirror.
Right.
I didn't believe I was worth being here. I remember an assault where I've always had a lot of hair. And I remember he was pulling my hair so hard, like pulling chunks of my hair out. And I went in the bathroom, and it was a bottle of pills, and it was scissors. And it was like, I'm going to cut all this hair off so he doesn't pull this. He doesn't pull this anymore. And then it was looking at these pills like, well, if I just take all of these, then I won't even have to deal with this anymore. But I was afraid to die. I was afraid of what would happen after. I'd always been taught that if you do that to yourself, what the afterlife would look like. And then I was afraid to leave my children. So it was like being afraid to live, but being afraid to die at the same time, because I thought I was living in hell. Right. So there was no other way out of that.
That's it.
But God.
That's it.
I used to say, God, why me? Why me? Why me? And now it was like, why not me? Because I feel like if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't have been sitting even here talking to you today.
Correct. And you probably could have been talking about it, but you are effective now.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people say, well, I'm glad I ain't had to go. Well, maybe because God knew you couldn't, that person couldn't handle that. Just like I
Right.
say about my PTSD and what I've been through and stuff like that. I like, okay, God, you allowed me to have this. You allowed me to go through this. I'm going to use it for something good.
Right.
And
And
I
I think so.
go, and I love the way you process your trauma differently. I mean, you did. You put up, now you got the boxing. Now you got the grow. You know, you could have got in a corner and just cried and be like, woe is me. And, you know, we have those moments, but in the end, you came out.
Yeah, and I'm just thankful, even as of June of last year, I started Neisha Christine Consulting, where I
Okay.
go around to different businesses and teach about domestic violence. So I was already doing that before for the last, I mean, I've been doing this work for 10 years now. So I've already been educating, going to different police departments. And that's how I even got the job at the police department, because the
Okay.
chief of that department saw me speaking about domestic violence to his recruits
That's,
and to different people in the community. So I've gone to churches to
mm-hmm.
talk to pastors, like, and faith-based communities, like, look, you can't just say pray about it, or you can't just be
Come on now. You
go to
can't.
having couples counseling and then have the person sitting in front of their abuser and you're like, tell us what's going on.
Correct.
Like we
Correct.
need to be educated. So it's like, how do I be more proactive instead of reactive? Because when people come to me, either for grow, they're either in that relationship or trying to get out or just recently left. But I'm trying to get people to understand it beforehand. So that's where I started going around to these different businesses. And I realized that that's what I'm here for. So when I say I will not shut up, and you may see me, I hashtag that all the time on social media, I will not shut up. My ex used to tell me, shut up. Don't nobody care what you have to say. Nobody cares about your poetry. Nobody cares about your crying. So now I literally refuse to be quiet about this.
Correct.
Like, period. No one is going to, I didn't go through all of that. God didn't pull me through all of that.
Come on now.
Just for me to sit here and be quiet. And that's not to say everybody, you can advocate in your own way. Everybody doesn't need to be on the forefront. But it's even, I have a great team in my nonprofit organization. Some of y'all who you never see, but they're the ones checking on me. Neisha, did you eat today? Correct. Neisha, I know you had a news interview today and that took a lot out of you. What do we need to do? Do we need to drop these toiletries off to this survivor? Do you need me to send out these emails? So you have these people behind the scenes. That's good. Doing the work, and we all can do something.
That's good. Listen, y'all, we talking to Miss Neisha Himes. I want to end this interview. I'm going to ask you a little later about your social media and all, and how folks can get in touch with you or help. But what would you say to that woman who is stuck and scared to leave?
I mean, I would say you hear it all. You hear, oh, you're not alone. There is help. And these things are true. But I challenge them to ask themselves, when they give themselves all of the reason why they have to go back, whether it's money, financial, whether it's the children, whether it's, not really having a support system, all of these different reasons you can give yourself to go back. I challenge you to ask yourself why you deserve to go back. Okay. And understand that there is light. This does not have to be your life. You don't have to learn to function in dysfunction. I challenge you to remember the you that you were before you met this person, or the you that you envision yourself to be. I had to get to a point where I looked in the mirror and say, I don't want to be here. I don't want to hate who I see in the mirror every single day. I don't want to run away from the mirror, and just know that there is help, that you can reach out to a local domestic violence agency. You can talk to someone that you trust. We're afraid of judgment often. We're really afraid of judgment, and being out, again, very close with my family. And I was terrified of what they would think of me, that I let them down, that I disappointed them. And it was just like, no, we're here. So just understand that you don't have to go through what you're dealing with, and that, yes, there are barriers. Yes, there are challenges. Know that I know it's not easy, but it's not impossible.
Correct.
And that you can't get out.
Thank you. Listen, I want to thank you for your courage. I want to thank you for your transparency. And I'm sure someone learned something today, and someone is going to be better because of what you shared and what you went through and how you are helping others. And I want to thank you for that, because it's not easy. It's not easy to expose yourself. But when we do it, we are here to help others. So if you can give people your social media, how they can get in touch with you so they can find out what you're doing, even how they can support your nonprofit financially.
Awesome. Yes, definitely, because we need it.
Yes, I'm going to sew into that.
Grow Foundation. You can check us out at www.growfoundationva.org. That's Grow Foundation VA as in Virginia.org. It has all of our social media on there. Our Instagram for Grow is grow_VA. Our Facebook is Grow Foundation VA, and our Twitter, I can't remember the last time I looked at Twitter. Grow Foundation 1. I have someone who helps with social media on that aspect. But if you go to our website, it has information about domestic violence. You learn about our team. You can learn about different signs and different types of domestic violence. You can go to where it says Help Grow, and it has a volunteer application because we need dedicated volunteers.
Okay.
It shows what you can donate. Look, anything from a $5 gift card to Starbucks. You don't know what it takes for a survivor just to sit down and have a cup of coffee or hot chocolate or a smoothie and just know that, okay, in this 10 minutes, I can just sit here and drink this coffee and that's it. I don't have to worry about hiding or running or anything. It's very difficult to live a normal life when you're constantly walking on eggshells every single day. Linens, dishes, appliances, all of these things help. Toiletries, and not just for women, but for our male clients as well. So that's as far as Grow Foundation. As far as Neisha Christine Consulting, if you're looking for someone to come to your church, to your school, to a jail, to your business and talk about domestic violence, how to recognize signs amongst coworkers. Because look, my coworkers, most of them didn't know what was going on. And the ones who did see things years later would tell me, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how to approach it.
Right.
So now I teach how to recognize the sign, how to implement prevention initiative, how to provide support to those who may be impacted by domestic violence. Because look, you go to get a new job in orientation, they talking about, the policies of the company, health insurance, but no one talks about, and if domestic violence is happening, this is how we handle the situation. So you can find more about that at www.neishachristine.com.
Okay.
And that has my social media as well. I have a whole TikTok where I teach about DV. It's pretty popular. And teach them about DV, and it's reaching a different demographic.
All right. So what is that? The first one, Grow VA?
Grow Foundation
VA.
Grow
Foundation VA.
VA.org. And then the second is Neisha Christine, that's Neisha, Christine.com.
All right. Listen, thank you for being here today. We enjoyed you. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who enjoyed you, and they will be following you on all your social media. And right now, you are released from the stigma-free zone.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was a great conversation.
You're more than welcome. Thank you.